Hey, good morning. Good morning. Welcome back, day two. What a great day we had yesterday. Conversations, the energy was really high. We were super excited about turnout and the level of discussion, great keynotes and sessions, and really exciting to see everyone here back for a second day. So today we'll start with Jay as he reflects on some of the things he observed and learned yesterday, followed by our zero waste team with metrics on how we did yesterday. Again, you saw the food presentations, and part of that is part of the conference. Nothing goes untouched here. So, and then, of course, I'm very excited to hear from our keynote speaker this morning, Dominic Endicott, partner at North Star Ventures and author of the just published book, Knowledge Towns, a new book from Johns Hopkins Press, on the power and potential of universities as drivers of regional development. Then we get to the money, which always underlies some of these things, and with a great discussion panel on innovation and investment this afternoon. Then after our morning food break, we have a rapid fire presentation from entrepreneurs at UVM and across the region. Listening to these 12 plus pitches will give you some ideas and insights into the amazing array of innovations happening in our community. As we listen to the investors then we listen to investors as they ask the hard questions after each presentation. So I'm really excited about that, hosted by David Bradbury and Dan Weiss is going to do the pitches, and really great day. At lunch, again, we'll hear from Casella this time on how we can activate the circular economy in Vermont, and then another fantastic lunch, and they'll explain more about that. After lunch, we hear from investors on what makes for a good investment in Vermont here and now with David Bradbury, president of UVM's affiliated incubator, VCET, the Vermont Center for Emerging Technology. That should really help set the tone for what directions are out there and where we can go. And then finally, we'll close the presentation portion of the conference with some closing remarks by me and an introduction to what's next, what follows the conference, including the planned work of UVM's Office of Engagement and Institute for Rural Partnerships. And you'll meet the new director of that office, Tricia Coates, and we'll talk about how to follow up with RISE, how to partner with the university, and how you can find help for your R&D needs across the region, in the broadest terms, obviously. And then following the conference, there'll be a networking mixer sponsored by the UVM Foundation with young alums doing amazing things. And that'll be moderated by entrepreneurship professor Eric Munson and sponsored by Alchemist and featuring local artist North Ave Jax, who's really going to be an exciting presentation. Recently signed record deal. I met him yesterday. A great guy. So. And that is kicking us off for today in the plan. And to reflect now is Jay.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Good morning. Good morning. How are we doing? We're still wooing? That's good. Thank you for rising. It's just there, right? It's called Rise. It just feels like something we want to do to honor this great event. Thank you to the university and each other. Always trying to be as respectful as we can to each other's energy and what we're providing today. I'm not sure what welcomes and reflections are, so I'm just going to welcome and reflect in the way that I understand that, and hopefully it means something. I've been asked, yesterday, about some of the pictures that I showed up, and how did you get to the place where you were producing sort of some of that unusual work? And I don't know that I had a good answer to that. So I thought, I feel like a career in the arts is a certain kind of path, and I think maybe it could be reflective of the way that your path feels. And I think about my work sort of like I've been hacking through a rainforest. So I graduated from the University of Pennsylvania with a dual degree in public policy and theater history. And I got a job directing a play downtown in Center City. And I didn't know what I was doing. I just want to work at the theater. And so I'm just hacking at the rainforest. I'm just trying to get under a branch and around this tree that's in my way because somebody says no, and then you kind of do this, and you just keep hacking at it. And you do that long enough, and you end up in new places that you didn't see coming, right? In a world that I think I'd be running the state's largest performing arts center in Vermont. It's quite an honor and a gift. But I couldn't have known that that was on my journey because I'm hacking through a rainforest. What's interesting about that metaphor to me and why it's useful is not that it's messy and hard and exhausting on the arm with the machete. It's that when you turn around and you can see the path you cut, it all makes sense to you. And you go, right, I see how I got here. And I had to go around that tree, and I had to make that choice, and that thing happened. And I think that's the best answer I have about how do you have this career, is you just got to keep pushing forward and being willing to get around that corner that you don't know what's on the other side. It seems kind of silly, it's a bit of a platitude, but it actually helps me understand how things happened. Does that make some sense? Okay. So a lot happened yesterday, and I thought I'd just start, if I could have some students with mics, great. I'd love to start with, this is something we do, so I've often, for a long time as a theater director, and I worked with playwrights on developing new work. And one of the things we would do a reading of a new play, and we'd have to try to understand what the audience heard. So I thought, maybe we could do that. So we just launched a new play yesterday, right? And it's dress rehearsal for me, so if I'm ready to do it now, better. What are the things that stuck with you? So a question I like to ask audiences of listening to a new play, what's a word or phrase that you heard that you can remember? It doesn't have to be the whole point, it doesn't have to be the person or what shoes they were wearing. It's really like what word or phrase go, oh, that describes something that rings something in my imagination. You wanna, can we get mics to folks? And there's a standing mic in the back for anyone who wants to be there.
Thank you. I'm Joseph Sincata, and I was super impressed after your presentation to talk about the way you fostered instant community in having people build that beautiful cupola top for the... I thought that was outstanding. And it says so much about humans, right? Because what we hear about in the news, of course, is by definition what most people are not doing, and that's what makes it news. But most people are passing by an event like yours, and they're making the decision, you said a few at first, and then ultimately hundreds, is what I heard correctly? Is that right?
Yes.
Were there, building, working together. People who, I'm going to presume, were largely strangers to each other.
I like to call that an interruptive gift.
Yay.
That's sort of how I think of my work when I'm in public space. You're on the way to the dentist, and you're like, who's this weirdo with the cardboard? Get out of my way. And somehow, it opens a door in your head, and you go, well, wait a minute, what is this? I should get involved. And I call that an interruptive gift.
Interruptive gift, I like that. So art is this kind of interruptive gift that even had cave people who barely had enough calories to get food from hunt to hunt, still find time to make art on the cave walls, right? So that's how important it is. And I think you reminded people in Philadelphia that day that art is important. And you stopped people in their tracks and got them involved in a project that was totally not on their radar. That's what art does. That's freaking powerful.
Thank you. That's very kind. I don't know what to say to that, actually. I'd like to think we all do that in a variety of ways, I hope. So for me, art functions really well as sort of the prime human metaphor of how we can be together, how we can feel about ourselves and our futures, and what we can achieve when we understand each other, when we develop empathy for each other's stories, when we lift up voices, when we ask the quietest person in our culture to ask their perspective, and we try to include it and say, we can't build this tower without you. That's what art ultimately is doing, and why it is an interruptive gift in the project-making part of the work. But ultimately, it's got to be, we got to think about it not just being this sort of thing that gets in your way, but somehow the thing that helps you get to where you're going. Ideally, it's doing both. Thank you for that. Other words or phrases that stuck with you yesterday? Yeah, in the back.
Hi, I'm George Slider. I'm with the Howe Library, and I just really like the phrase "smaller is better," just because I feel like it's not only just being smaller, but the connections that we make, and when we're small, we can make a lot of connections, but also you can think of a small little entity and go out into the universe and make it big. So,
Smaller is better. Thank you. Yeah.
Hi. Interestingly, my comment from yesterday kind of dovetails nicely with that one. I think it was you that said that scale can sometimes mean that something is too big to feel like it's for you. And that's been sticking with me a lot since yesterday. Our organization, one of the drivers that we work towards and we talk about constantly is inclusive tech culture building. And I think that we work with rural communities, and oftentimes tech and innovation can feel really scary, and the idea of scaling things kind of beyond, what you're saying, like beyond the radius of comfort and control is really scary. But the importance of harnessing art, harnessing relationships, harnessing trust to bring people along and make sure that the scale doesn't outpace the feeling of being invited, the feeling of being included is really important. So that really struck with me yesterday.
Thank you. I appreciate that. That's some of my reflections in listening is that scale sometimes was like a driver of excitement up here, like, oh, we could do this big thing together. And sometimes scale was like a way to kind of avoid the topic. Like, we want to grow a variety of industries here, right, that I was hearing, but we need to solve the housing problem. But that almost felt too big to talk about. And that's interesting to me in terms of all the way we have these different scales of challenges together. But ultimately, it's this one-on-one relationship. We're trying to help this other person get what they need. There is that wall, I'll remind you, should you want to say anything about what you need. But who else has, I don't know, a phrase that stuck with them? Yeah.
My name is Doug Merrill. It's not really a phrase, but I did want to communicate both the sense of hope and some concern that I saw yesterday in the talks, and then just at lunch, sitting with the folks around the table with me. I was hopeful that there was a shared consensus that I felt this for a couple of years now, that there's been a lot of success here in Burlington in growing the community and growing the tech startup. And 10 years ago, we were worried that our kids weren't going to be able to, they all left because no one had a job. There's no jobs that kids would want when they graduated college in Burlington. That's changed, and remarkably in the past 10 years. And I'm proud to be a part of that, and I'm thrilled to see it. But there's a recognition that A, we're sort of leaving some of the rest of Vermont behind, and B, I mean, we moved to Vermont 20 years ago because we didn't want to live in suburban New York or suburban Washington, and I don't want Chittenden County to become that. And so the question is, there's a way to make this a win-win where the rest of the state absorbs some of this growth. But it's not easy, and a lot of the startups I talk to and young companies want to be close to UVM. They want to be close to the airport, and I can, for good reasons. And so the challenge is, and the reason that there's concern is, there's no really easy way to just say, okay, let's just make Virgins and St. Johnsbury and Lyndonville, let's make them the next Burlingtons. It's going to be really hard. But I think there is a growing consensus among a lot of people in this room and a lot of different communities that we need to work on that problem.
Thank you for that. In the back?
Good morning, everybody. My name is Nina Smolyar. I'm a PG student at the Rubenstein School. And I was reflecting on how inspired I felt by Kyle Clark's presentation and how much he emphasized empathy and prioritizing the well-being of your people and aligning that with the values of the business. So it's not just, the PR and the mission and the vision, but actually embedding how decisions are made at every level and having that be like a holistic approach. I think sometimes there's very highly inspiring, highly aspirational missions of many organizations, but the way they're actually run, the way they're governed and led is not actually aligned. So to see that in a business that's also very, very excellent for and beneficial for the environment was incredibly inspiring. Thank you.
Thank you, Nina. I agree. What Kyle's doing is kind of amazing. Anyone else? So those 2 points, I think, dovetail with, we talked about sustainability. I asked you yesterday to define sustainability. Do you remember in the presentation? You said things like something that continues on its own without much control, something that is resilient and adaptable and lasting, taking responsible action to ensure that desired outcomes can continue, alignment between goals and resources, thrive and change over time, thoughtful consumption, living within ecological boundaries, long-term success and failure, not relying on external support, feasible renewable development, do no harm to the environment, stewardship to keep a balance between the needs of our ecosystems and society, difficult to achieve. These were just the response. You remember we did it on Thing. And then I talked about my feeling is sustainability is connected deeply to empathy. That sustainability is really about how do I get my needs met without preventing others, particularly future others, from meeting their needs. And so at the center of this is sort of the human. I don't know what else to say. We talked a lot about that idea, and I think that came up throughout the day. So that question of sustainability is going to come up again today, I think, about how do we center each other as we work towards this change as growth, if growth is necessary. Gentleman in the back said maybe smaller is preferred, and that's an interesting question, and that tension that we're all facing. So last question, I had said I want the right to fail. So if I were to write something, if there was another board there, I need, I will, I want, I would say I want the right to fail. I think sometimes when I've made a project and it's not been any good, and by the way, that's happened. I didn't show those pictures. I somehow become more qualified for the next project, not less, although sometimes it's harder to convince someone that you're more qualified, because they're like, well, you just did this terrible thing. I'm not hiring you. And you're like, well, actually, now that I've done that terrible thing, I can do a better thing. Sometimes it works. Anyway, so that's what I had said is I want the right to fail. I'm curious, what do you want? What do you want to see? You're heading into a full day of learning. What do you want? Come on, you got out of bed. You thought, I'm going to go attend this thing. I'm going to learn something. What do you want? What are you hoping for? You want to be inspired. I'm sorry? Funding. You want funding. If you don't ask for it, you can't get it. So just ask for it. It's at least the first step. More opportunities to listen and talk, which is more networking, which means you know what you have to do during lunch. And there's a mixer of sorts at the end of this at 4. Opportunities. You're going to get what you want. I can't promise the funding, though. Action. Amen. I want more action. I agree. All right, well, I'm so grateful to have been here and to get to meet you, so please come say hi. It's just such a pleasure, and it's really good to think through how my actions, my choices, my behaviors are going to contribute to a greater whole. That's all I can do, is get out of bed and try to make a meaningful choice that day to contribute to action and opportunity and talking and funding. So thank you. I'd like to invite a colleague, Sarra, up to the stage. Where is she? You moved to 11. Oh, I didn't know that. But now everyone knows it's going to be at 11. Well, that's amazing. Oh, well, we're right on time. So thank you, and have a really great day. I'll see you soon.